the way that they make these schemes work, kind of the linchpin of the schemes is a document called the Notice of Proposed Assessment. So what happens is, if for whatever reason they believe that you owe them money, they send you a document called a Notice of Proposed Assessment. And it basically says, we believe you owe X amount of money in taxes. We believe you've paid X amount of money in taxes. This is the difference plus penalties and interest. And you have 30 days to respond to this notice. So the Notice of Proposed Assessment will show how much money was collected by your employer from your primary job. So they show all the money that's collected in wages from all your jobs, but they only show the amount of money collected from your primary employer towards state income taxes. And they don't show overages like SDI overpayments or any other money that may have been collected by your employer. And they don't show any, so if you have a second job, the money from your second job doesn't show up. And if you've mailed in any estimated tax payments, which self-employed people do, retired people do, people who have stock income do, there's quite a lot of people who mail in estimated tax payments. Those don't show up as well. And so the Franchise Tax Board told us for years that those 5 estimated tax payments that we had sent in for 2010 were lost and they just couldn't be located. Well, 2 of them had been misapplied and the other 3 were lost and couldn't be located. And so they refused to acknowledge my dispute, or they call it protest, that we didn't really owe this tax money because we had paid our tax liability. I mean, we didn't owe on the penalties and interest because we'd paid our liability in full. Like the liability, the notice would have never been sent, and the liability, the tax penalty would have never been imposed had they applied all of our estimated tax payments. And they just basically disregarded me. They were like, nope, no tax payments, no tax payments, no tax payments, end of story. So eventually in 2016, at the end of 2016, I finally got my legislators involved. And once Governor Brown and my assemblymen contacted the Franchise Tax Board, all of a sudden they magically found the money that had been unlocatable for so long. And it turned out that FTB told me that they have a policy where they deliberately withhold all these payments. So they take the money that you send them, they cash the check right away, and then they put the money in a general slush fund instead of applying it to your account. And they don't take the money out of your account and apply it to your tax return until the date that you file your return. So if you file late, your account falsely appears underfunded, and they falsely send you a Notice of Proposed Assessment, and they falsely impose the penalties. Because the tax law clearly states that they can impose a late filing fee if you have underpaid the tax liability as determined by FTB's as a status of single filing 0. What they don't, so they tell you they have a right to impose a late filing penalty, but they omit the part about they can only impose it if you've both filed late and underpaid. So they falsely make your account look like it's underpaid so they can falsely impose the penalties. And they hide the tax law from you, what the tax law says in full. They cherry pick words out of context, they omit big portions of the law, they omit the law that works hand in hand with, so 19133 works in, Revenue and Tax Code 19133 works in conjunction with Revenue and Tax Code 19807. They hide 19807 from you completely so that you don't know that it exists, so that you can't figure out that the fee is unlawfully imposed. So that's actually 3 of the 4 racketeering schemes that I caught. One is withholding estimated tax payments made via Credit Elect, which is when you file your taxes, if you're owed a refund, you can roll the money over from one year to the other instead of taking a cash payment. So they withhold those payments. They withhold all estimated tax payments made by married couples, and they withhold payments from secondary employers. So those are what I've caught in our own records. I'm sure that they withhold more than that, but that's what I've been able to document. Whenever you file a protest or a dispute to a notice of proposed assessment, if the Franchise Tax Board does open it timely, like let's say you fax it or you send it overnight mail and they process it within 24 hours if it's an overnight service, they will, when they process it, they misclassify it as a no response. So instead of calling it a protest, they call it a no response, and then they impose the fees anyway. So that's a total violation of the law, because if you do respond to a notice timely, they're not allowed to impose the penalty. It's only when you don't respond that they impose a penalty. So by misclassifying it, so even if you do get it in, they misclassify it, and then they get away with falsely imposing the penalty. So no matter what you do when it comes to the notice of proposed assessment, there is no way that you can get that penalty lifted.